Electrocast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Alex Reegan is the author of What Needs to Be Said, as well as an interfaith minister, speaker, and transformational spiritual coach who uses his intuitive wisdom to help guide people towards their own inner knowing. Born into an evangelical Christian family that prevented his true identity as a trans man from emerging, he spent years in depression, anxiety, and addiction trying to break free of the oppressive beliefs that bound him. His journey at last led him to sobriety, shamanism, and then seminary, which helped him reclaim his faith and trust in the divine. I'm proud to call Alex a good friend of mine, as someone who sees me, understands me, and aligns with me despite the distance between us. I hope you enjoy this incredible human, and please excuse my croaky voice in this one. Welcome, Alex, to the Ethical Evolution.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Me too. Now, for those of you who don't know who you are and what you do, can you go ahead and tell us?
Yeah, you bet. So I guess right now my big thing, I just published a book with Hay House Publishing. It's called What Needs to Be Said. Speak Your Truth, Release Shame, Find Oneness. I think I got a copy back here. That's exciting. It's been out, I guess it'll be 2 months tomorrow. So that's really exciting. So that's kind of a combination of memoir, self-help. I guess kind of the new phrasing they call is like a teaching memoir. So it's got part of my story is built into it, which is that of a trans man born into a pretty evangelical family. I didn't necessarily go to what would be considered a very evangelical denomination of church. It was just my family and their friends were really on that sort of leaning very right of center and sort of, not really, let's just be honest, pretty homophobic and things like that. So growing up in that, kind of my story of knowing from a very young age that I was, definitely different from them. So my story tells that, and then struggles I went through after coming out and all that stuff. And then what led through what I call the emergence, which is sort of coming out from the other side of that, coming into like my spiritual work, some training I did in shamanism, going to an interfaith seminary, and so many more things in the middle of that. And then it also has, kind of like a workbook built into it. So it has practices, sort of meditation, writing samples, things like that, for the reader to like do their work alongside me.
I absolutely love it. Now, for those people listening, yes, I don't sound like my dulcet self, so bear with me. I'm a little croaky today, so thank you, Alex, for bearing with me. But you and I were just chatting off air, and there's so much that you and I have in common in that, we've both come out, we're both now in touch with that spiritual side of ourselves, and we're sharing that with others, and we coach others in those areas. Also writing books. I'm in the middle of writing one at the moment. Not the same kind of stuff you are, but very similar. And there's just so many things. I'm sure we're going to go through our conversation and be going, me too.
I love it. Yeah, I guess I left out that part too. I also do coaching. Yeah. I'm also an interfaith minister. I do one-on-one workshops, etc. with people.
Now, there's a couple of touch points from what you said that I'd like to elaborate on through our conversation. One of those is obviously your coming out story and how that was for you. And also the sentiment for you at the moment in terms of being a trans person in the US at the moment. Obviously with all that's going on in government there at the moment. The other thing I'd love to touch on is shamanism, how you got into that and what you've brought out of that into your practice now.
Yeah, you bet.
So let's start with your little bit more detail in your story. Take us back to where it started for you.
Yeah. So, I think as a little kid growing up, in the 70s and 80s, obviously I didn't have the language where I lived. Certainly, I didn't have language for gay that young. Certainly, I didn't have language definitely for transgender at that time. So, I think I just knew, I have a story I share in the book. When I was about 6, 7, I was playing in the front yard with my brother and a bunch of boys in the neighborhood. And we were all kind of running around in the sprinklers with my shirt off, all of us with our shirts off. And my mom, sort of very frantically was like, oh my God, you have to put your shirt back on, girls can't go outside. And I was just kind of like, I was very confused. Like, this is weird. I look just like them. They look like me, and that was sort of the first moment of like, something's awry here, kind of thing. And then that sort of escalated to, at about 10, as they started teaching, sex ed and things in school and showing parts of things. I was like, okay, now I'm really, I'm like really confused with what's going on. And I remember sort of like approaching a couple boys in class being like, hey, I'll show you what I got down there if you show me what you got down there. Cause I was like, this is weird, like I'm really. And of course we got caught. We totally got busted. And, they called my mom. And of course she's thinking this is something like, oh, you don't let people touch our privates. Like, I'm not touching. What are you talking about? And I'm just trying to see what's down there, was in my mind. And then she's like, you only let your husband. And I'm like, now I have to have a husband. I'm like 10, like this just like created a lot of confusion. So that was sort of like the beginning stages of things where there felt like this confusion. I couldn't really explain it. Didn't have words for it, but I just knew something felt different from what people were telling me. And then, by the time I hit puberty, I was like, clearly I'm attracted to girls. And that then kind of tripped that thought in my mind, like, oh, I must be what they're saying, this gay, kind of thing. And what's that mean? I don't know entirely, but I knew I was attracted to the girls and I felt very uncomfortable with that. In a lot of ways, I was just like, oh, this is certainly bad. And I tell this story in the book as well of my mom when I was maybe 12, 13, like their friend had a young son who was in his probably early 20s at the time who had contracted HIV and it had turned into full-blown AIDS. And he was definitely, unfortunately he was really sick and dying. And they had him over for dinner. And of course they didn't tell us anything. They just were like, don't touch him. Don't touch anything. It was really that fear. The early 90s still was really in a place of fear and misinformation. And we don't own misinformation in 2023 and like the last 8 years, since 2016. Misinformation has been around for a long time. So I heard her telling him, he was going to go to hell, for being gay and he needed to repent and all of this stuff. And it was like at that moment, I was kind of like at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't know that I was listening. But at that moment I knew, oh, like, okay, this is like what's going to happen to me. And I think it was like this weird moment of like, shit, this is my, future. But also this moment of like knowing I had to either choose them and lose myself or choose me and lose them. Like it was just this weird juxtaposition. So that's really kind of like how things began for me. And it was a lot to carry as a little kid at that time with especially nobody, now I'm, not that it's easy for everyone, but at least there are resources that most kids can get a hold of. Most kids can find things online. They can contact places, which I'm just so grateful to know that that's sort of been created. But back then that wasn't a thing. There weren't, LGBTQ clubs in school. There weren't, there was no place. So it was like, I carried all that for, until, in college. So for quite a while until I met some other human who I felt I could kind of talk to about that.
And I think it's when we tell our stories that it actually helps others understand theirs, and I think that's where our unity is as people. And as you were telling your story, I'm like, yeah, it's so similar to mine in that, when I was a little girl, I'd be down the street on my bike with the boys, no shirt on, down the creek, up in the crops, all this kind of, because I lived in a small country town. I was out with the boys. I was doing all the, the fun stuff. And again, my mum would be yelling at me down the street, get home, put your clothes on. And she'd always be trying to make me grow my hair and, do it, Princess Leia buns on my head and all this kind of shit. And I was like, nah, this does not feel right for me. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older, I'm like, things still don't quite feel right. But, and eventually, everything fell into place. It was like, oh, I get it now, And, everybody has a unique experience and how they, it's an evolution, really,
Totally.
And there's some people who also, they might think, oh, no, I'm gay, or no, hang on, I might be bi, but there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling, I think is the most important thing. Whatever your attraction is, no matter how you identify, there's nothing wrong with it. It is you, it is unique, and there is a spectrum, Not everyone is 100% straight or 100% gay or whatever. You are you. I think that is the most important thing we could share with anyone when it comes to identity and sexuality.
Definitely.
What challenges do you face now in the US with all this trans talk going on in the background? Obviously, it's got to feel a little bit discomforting, to know that people want to put laws in place around this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty intense right now here. There's a lot of, again, misinformation is really just sort of flowing freely right now. And I think that's the thing, as I think my book couldn't have come out at a better time. I mean, it's kind of ironic, even a year ago when I turned in the manuscript, a year ago on the July 4th, I turned in the full manuscript. It still wasn't what it is now, and 2 years ago when I got the deal, it was like, I couldn't have imagined we'd be at this space where we have like 400 or 500 laws now that are trying to be passed all across the United States. I know the UK is facing things, it's pretty rampant around globally, honestly. But there also are really positive things happening that are happening in other countries as well. And even here in the States, there are positive things that are happening in the more as we call them, blue states, the more liberal states. So, it's got its intensity. It's if I'm having an off day, it feels like a heavy weight and a heavy burden for sure. Like, oh my God, how are we going to overcome this? But one thing I also have really learned is the best thing I can do is my own internal work. And I don't mean that we can't do things out in the world as well, that we can't protest, that we can't write letters, that we can't give money to organizations that are fighting these laws, et cetera, et cetera. By all means, do that. But I also know that if something feels uncomfortable to me, if I feel, I know the word triggered gets thrown around a lot nowadays, but if I feel triggered by something, I know my first sort of go-to nowadays is to say, oh, okay, there's something inside of me that's like wanting this external out here to be different so that I feel better. And that's always like a big red flag to me, because to me, I notice like one thing I've come to with my parents is a similar thing. My parents, obviously, it sounds like in a way, possibly your parents too, they wanted us to be someone they needed us to be so that they would feel better.
Yep.
Because then they wouldn't feel whatever was coming up for them.
Yeah.
So if I do that same thing in return, I've become no different than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really sort of struck me in the last few years as I've finished the book. And as, I've been building up to sort of, it's like a whole nother coming out. This is like now, again, now this is for real. Every time someone reads the book, it's like another coming out. It's another coming out. And so that's one thing I really have tried to do is, what can I do inside of me? What can I heal about my own shame, my own self-loathing, my own fear of getting it wrong, my own fear of being punished by God or by society or whatever, and just to keep trying to dig just keep excavating deeper and deeper. What can I heal? What can I heal? Because I do believe our external is a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So if I'm seeing a lot of stuff that seems like it's against me and seems like I'm the other, I know somewhere inside of me, I feel like the other and I'm feeling against someone, and I can check that. I can be like, ooh, wait, hold on. Let's look at this. Like there's something going on here.
Absolutely. So. And, it just made me think that, I know there's people in our LGBTQIA plus community who are quite militant, in the forefront of their mind is always, how are people attacking me? Or how are they not being fair to me? Like, how about you just take a look at yourself? The change starts with us. And that's the big thing that this show's all about, is like looking at ourselves and how we can bit by bit be that change we want to see in the world. And you're exactly right. If you're triggered by something, it's something in you. It's not what somebody else has done. And we are getting so sensitive to not triggering people, but it's them, it's not us. So that is a really, really important way to look at it, regardless of how you identify and what's going on in your world, is like, what's going on with you?
Yep.
Do you see the same thing in the circles over there? Like there's people who get out and they protest and they big voices, but what are they doing for themselves?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And again, that's what some people feel that that's their calling or that's their work, to be out there on the front lines, pounding the pavement, fighting. But for me, for years I was studying, for a while I was in a master's program that was literally a master's in social change, like in activism, and I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to be fighting the fight, all this stuff. And then hilariously, like the school in the middle of between this first and second year, the school ended up getting busted for like some guy was embezzling like financial aid money or something from the government. No. The school just got like shut down. Like they were like, you're done. So the school went like bankrupt. And nobody wanted to touch the credits. Everyone was like, I'm not touching that school. So it's just like, the universe was like, yeah, that's not for you. Like, that's not like it clearly just decided for me, like, this is not the path for you. And I think from that moment on, it began this sort of reconfiguring, like, okay, wait, do I want to just constantly be fighting against things? And what I came to find is I wanted to find out like what I was for instead of like what I was against. Because if I'm all about what I'm against, I'm fighting an unending battle that you'll never get out of, because they're also fighting what they're against.
Absolutely.
They're not fighting for what they're for. And again, I don't even think you fight for what you're for. I think you just speak up for what you're for, and you actually live for what you're for versus fighting against, what you are against. I think there's a big distinction of that. And again, it's not for everyone. I know a lot of people just feel like, yeah, but there's so much to fight for. I have this whole part about like my fighting day in the book. I say like my fighting days are done. Like I've put down my sword. I've put down my shield. Like I'm done. And I know that would trigger some people. They'd be like, what is wrong with you? There's so much to fight for still. I'm like, be my guest, like more power to you. I love you. Good luck in that. But I'm not your partner in that. Like I can't just keep fighting against everything that I need to be different out there so that I can feel some sort of semblance of peace inside of me.
That is so, so true. And it's such a great way to look at it as well. Just touching back on, the positive things that are happening, in particular for those who identify as transgender around the world. Here in Australia, you're most welcome here, Alex, anytime. Yes. I was actually watching Queensland Parliament TV. Queensland is where I am in Australia.
Yep.
And I was watching our Parliament TV a couple of weeks ago, and they were actually putting bills in place to protect those communities and to make safer spaces. And like a lot of people joke our state is the nanny state because we protect everything possible. But it's the safest place to be, really. If you want to come here to Queensland, you're welcome anytime. It's a safe space no matter how you identify.
I love it. And that's true. I mean, I think, I was saying to a friend recently, we live in both the most like advanced and safest time it has ever been to be LGBTQIA plus in the world. And also we're facing some difficult issues because that's what happens when progress happens. When progress pulls us forward, there's always a handful of people that are like, oh, wait, but I liked it back here. I think this was a good time. And I'm like, yeah, because you were at the top of the food chain and you were, colonialism, capitalism,
Yep.
like, of course, white supremacy. Of course, you were doing great at that time. You're like a white cishet straight guy. That was like great time for you.
Yeah.
Your time is no more.
Yeah.
Like you've had your turn. Kind of thing. But there's always going to be people that are going to pull backwards too, and it's just the momentum that we have I believe it's already unstoppable. What's happening? All of this is just. I always liken it to, when a toddler is so tired that they just are having this meltdown, that they just refuse to go to sleep. That's like what's happening right now. It is just this meltdown of the old way, of the patriarchy, of white supremacy, of capitalism, of colonialism, of all of these ways that we have been and that we are moving out of, because the kids these days, they don't tolerate this stuff, man. I'm always so impressed with the 15, 16, even 12, 13-year-olds. I mean, they just don't tolerate crap like this anymore. They don't accept it. They just see people for people and they're like, hey, you're a non-binary, pansexual, like, great. Like they just go with it. Like I think they're more surprised when someone's like, oh, I'm straight. I'm like, this is this straight guy. And they're like, oh, okay. So I think things are changing in a way that we, in our lifetime, will see dramatic shifts.
And you look in media today, like we're seeing much more exposure of trans people in very, very high exposure areas, like magazine covers, TV shows, movies. They're making big moves and they're doing a great job at it.
Definitely. I mean, Elliot Page's memoir just hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Like, a trans man is like a #1 New York Times bestseller. That wouldn't have happened a decade or 15 years ago.
Can you imagine like the shift in media that's happened for that to occur now? Like, that's incredible. Wow. Like this could be.
I'm like, come on, I'm up next. Put me.
All right, we'll put you #1 next, huh? Everybody go out and buy What Needs to Be Said and make sure that beats Elliot Page.
We can be 1 and 2, just switch back and forth. It'd be great.
And I'll let you know when mine comes out.
All right, perfect. We'll get you up there too.
Now, tell us about some of the work that you do now in terms of coaching with people and your spiritual practice. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, coaching with people has been sort of this variation. I've struggled sometimes to even define how you define it. I think right now I have like transformative spiritual coach, kind of like that's the best way I could really kind of word it. But honestly, a lot of times it ends up looking different with each person I end up working with. It really depends on what it is that they've got going on, what it is they're looking to do, move past, heal through. And I've kind of taken all of these various modalities that I've been trained in myself and worked with just in my own personal life and sort of, mashed them all together into this, I've sort of taken what works and left the rest and just sort of mashed it all together with my own intuition and my own work with my guides and everything like that, and just sort of created its own unique thing. So, it might look like a guided meditation or visualization with someone where we're doing some shamanic type work where we're maybe going into a past life or looking at things that are affecting, what they think is going on right now. I'm like, it might not be connected to this. It might not be connected to what you think it's connected to right here. It might be connected to something deeper from your childhood. It might go back into their lifetimes and just sort of like, helping people, sort of facilitating that journey for people, and helping them access that themselves. But I do think a big part of it is, the tagline I sort of use is that I yearn to remind people of who they are. And I think a lot of times we get caught up, I was at like a big workshop, recently with some well-known people who were spectacular. I mean, the workshop was one of the most spectacular. If you could put on a workshop of how to put on a workshop, it was that. I mean, it was spectacular. But what I was paying attention to a lot was the people, like the people attending. And what I kept noticing is that so many people show up for workshops or show up to work with coaches or other spiritual people who do readings, sessions, Akashic readings, shamanic work, the list goes on. So many of us show up, and I've certainly done this as well, show up into these spaces just sort of hoping someone's going to sort of tell us, like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. How do I proceed? And there's this like hunger for it. There's this hunger for like, tell me what to do. Like, tell me, I can't see clearly. And I think the masterful, amazing, the best people, coaches, spiritual guides, whatever they are the people who can redirect people back to their own knowing. And to reminding them that you have the access to that within inside of you. And like I said, I watched like a masterclass of that this last weekend. And I think, so that's my hope always too, whenever I'm working with someone, is to just guide them back to their own knowing that they have access to all of this, that all that they need within them. But I think, we're trained out of that at very early ages. I mean, I'm just thinking about you and me as little kids sort of being told, put on this dress. Well, mine was earrings always. Like, my mom was obsessed with me wearing earrings. Like, oh, they're going to grow clothes. Guess what? They're like 50 years old almost. They haven't grown clothes. Like, they still, and I haven't had an earring in there in like 30 years. So it was always this thing, do this, be this. And I think we lose sight of in our own guidance system, so we sort of get trained out of that. And so I think, again, the best coaches, the best people who are doing this kind of spiritual work are going to guide you back to like reclaiming that, reconnecting with that, and sort of relearning that guidance system and finding that, like, that authentic voice of you inside of you, not as like someone you need to become or, something like that, like even being different than who you are, that it's inside of you.
And everything you've just said is practically what I would say if someone asked me the same question.
Awesome.
With some variants. I also, being a spiritual coach, it is what people need in the moment. You meet them where they are, you know what I mean? And
totally.
I've kind of done the same thing where I've taken all these different practices that I've experienced or learnt or just somehow developed and mashed them all together and just pull them out of my toolbox as they need them. Whether it be meditations, whether it be, actually connecting with them and find, like, I'm a little bit psychic as well. So I get psychic messages as well. So it's actually finding those messages for them and actually helping them to connect with their own intuition and their knowing, as you say, to find the answers for themselves.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's a carbon copy, isn't it?
I love it.
Now, the challenge I have, and I don't know if you have the same, but it is when you say to someone, I'm a spiritual coach, they go, what does that mean? Are you like religious? Like, what is that? I mean, how can we simplify this for people to make them see how powerful it can be for them to experience?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I get a double dose of that because then I say that I'm an interfaith minister, and then they're like, "Wait, you're a Christian?" I'm like, "What part of Christian did you get out of interfaith?" So yes, by all so true. I definitely get asked that a lot. For a while, I was using this phrase called soul seer. Helping people that and that's just sort of who I've always been. I've always seen people at like their soul level, and for years I kind of used that with and I got people, "What's that? What's that?" It's exactly what it sounds like, so I do think there ends up being a lot of confusion. There's a lot of like triggering. Even the word spiritual now is so closely lumped in society to religion for a lot of people that there's a lot of confusion. And I kind of left off that I was going to say, when we're looking for people to tell us, what to do and how to be, like we're saying, the best coach is the best guy. They're going to direct you back to yourself. But religion will gladly step in and say, I know the answer. Let me show you the way, kind of thing. And so I think there is that fear and that anxiety that people carry over sort of like, what will this mean if I do this spiritual work, and what does that look like? Tell me more. I'm unsure. And especially, I find in the LGBTQI plus community, there's sometimes a real aversion, like, hey, I've been down that road before. I've been burnt by that, so yeah, it's a challenge. And I think in part it is about, it always comes back to me. I mean, I know social media is great. I know, great. I use that term loosely, I guess. It has its downfalls, but we've found each other through these kinds of things. That's how we do get around nowadays. But I also think, word of mouth and other people telling other people, hey, I had this coaching session, or I had this session with someone that's like an intuitive that does blah, blah, blah. I can't even totally explain it to you, but you should try it. I do think that still is such a profound way of like sort of spreading the gospel, so to speak. I think that is a really crucial and important part. So I think it's also about telling the people who we have worked with, hey, make sure you tell other people, pass my info along, because I think that's a really, really important thing. And, and I'll toss this out there, or like we could talk about it at the end, but I try to give as many free sessions as I can to people who are LGBTQIA plus, because I know also like our community is hard up to find resources. Sometimes it's hard to like, I don't have extra money to spend on what we might see as like not necessary or something, but I really do encourage people, like, this stuff is necessary. Your life will definitely improve if you get into therapy or doing deep spiritual work, like we're talking about. It's going to definitely help you, and it's going to help you grow and expand, through the trauma that you have most likely suffered by living in society right now.
Absolutely. And, I interviewed a master coach recently who used to work for the Franklin Covey Institute. So right up there when it comes to coaches, and I asked them, why should people invest in a coach? People don't think it's worth paying for. Like, why should I pay someone to tell me what to do? But if we liken it to, a sport, someone in the Olympics, are they going to, go to practice in their backyard and win a gold medal? I mean, if they're bloody good, yeah, maybe. But the only way you're going to reach the pinnacle of where you want to be in any field in life is to actually invest in someone who can help you take those things to the next level. You can't do it all by yourself. If you want to be great at something, you can get so far on your own, absolutely. And I highly encourage people to tap into that. But if you want to go next level, a coach is where you go.
Definitely. That's a beautiful analogy, metaphor. I mean, I've not thought of it that way myself, but that's absolutely the best of the best had extraordinary coaches. I mean, I'm sure Michael Jordan, all the greats of all sports, had a great coach somewhere along the way who was a person who helped them go to the next level. And we so revere sports, right? We revere those people. And that's a great metaphor then to take. Okay, great. Then, if you want to reach your level of whatever your industry is and whatever your passion is, you want to reach higher levels. That's a great way to do it, to get someone to help you. And I also just think in community, you said earlier something when we were talking at the very beginning about storytelling. I also think storytelling, we've always been storytellers. We have been storytellers since before we even verbally. I mean, there are caveman drawings on rocks in caves and on walls all throughout this whole planet, from our ancestors long ago, before there was necessarily even verbal language. We've always been storytellers. And I think that's where our healing lies.
Absolutely.
Is really in our storytelling and in walking in these journeys. I think the reason we're actually in such a place of struggle that we are in now is because we become too independent. We become too isolated. Like, I'm over here, you're over there. We never lived like this. We lived in community as tribes and villages. We lived as one. Everyone played a role and played a part in order for the whole community to thrive. And I think we've gotten so far away from that we just we're just isolated. I remember I've quoted a woman, Dr. Edith Eger, in my book. She wrote the book called The Choice, and she was a Holocaust survivor. And I heard her speak in person at a synagogue, and she said the people who survived in the camp were the people who worked together. And if you went at it alone, you didn't last for very long. And she tells this extraordinary story of like when like they were free, like the day that they were about to be freed by, I think it was the Americans, could have also been the Russians, coming in to the camp. But the Nazis like were marching them out, and they were trying to escape with like whoever was sort of left. And her back was broken. And they had said, if you stop, whatever, we're just going to shoot you. Like, this is the end, and her friends carried her. And I just always thought of that image, that it's just like, that's how we're meant to be in community, in this collective. We're not good at going it alone. We're just not.
Absolutely. And, there's another analogy I've made recently, and I'm actually going to talk about our friend, mutual friend, Nikki LaCroce from the Who the Fuck podcast. She and I had a conversation, and ever since I've used this analogy when things get stupid in life, and it goes back to cavemen, funnily enough, as you were just saying. I was talking to my mum yesterday because all the people going on about trying to get Taylor Swift tickets here because there's only 4 shows or something and only in 2 states and everybody's losing their mind. And I was just like, people are just like, their life is over because they can't get a Taylor Swift ticket. And I was like, come on, get a grip of yourself, really. There's people here who can't eat right now, and all you care about is a Taylor Swift ticket and not getting one.
Yep.
But I love to look back to caveman times. If they had a TV screen in their cave looking at us today in 2023, they would be sitting there laughing about how crazy we all are. The stupid shit we do. Like I was saying to Nikki, we shoot each other. We're there trying to survive and not get eaten by a tiger.
Yep.
Look at that difference. If we can just take perspective into things and go, wow, what a world we live in now. And it doesn't need to be that way.
Definitely. I mean, we're like the only animal that actually harms itself.
Yes.
Like other animals do maybe once in a while over extreme territory or like for good reason, right? Or like, you're going to harm my young, not just nilly-willy, like, hey, I'm going to go to the mall and shoot 30 people. Like, it's unbelievable, what we've evolved into as a species.
I just think it's such a useful analogy, like when the world gets crazy, you just go, imagine the cavemen watching us now. What would they say and what would their experience be?
Yeah, for sure.
I think
they would be pretty stunned.
If we can strip things back sometimes, it really just helps us see how crazy we all are sometimes, and that all this other shit doesn't matter,
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I love Tay-Tay, but not that much.
Me too.
Now, you got into shamanism as well and tried that out, and also now integrate that into the work that you do. Tell us a bit more about what that looks like if someone wanted to experience that with you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was probably one of the most life-changing. I had an Akashic Records reading. I don't know if you know what the Akashic Records is.
Yes.
Brilliant. Those of you online listening, if you don't know, look it up. It's worth looking at. It's also spectacular. But so I had a reading. The woman said to me, you've got a tear in your second chakra. I've never even seen that before. You need to see a shaman.
Really?
Like, okay. And in a way, I didn't even know really what a shaman was at that time. I was just like, I'm thinking like what I've seen in a movie or things. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So I just sort of stored that away. And then a couple of months later, I was like with a group of friends who someone was saying, oh, I went to this amazing like energy healer. She's here from the UK. You have to see her when she's here. Like, it's incredible. So I got that woman's info, went to see her. Incredible, amazing. Like, we're actually still friends a decade plus later. But she also is like, okay, I worked some on that, but there's probably still more to be done. And I was like, okay. And then I ended up at a spiritual center where the woman said, I talked to her afterwards and we're just kind of chatting. I'm telling her what's going on. She goes, you need to see a shaman. And I was like, oh God, this is a repeating theme. She goes, I know one. I'll send, here's their number, call them. So again, I didn't have really any idea what that was, like, truthfully, what it looks like in modern day, in the United States, in not an indigenous or Native American setting per se, which is what you often see like in movies and things like that. So, that began like this transformational process. I mean, I know you asked more about what it looks like for me, but I just want to share this brief part of it, that was where, I started work with the woman. She would do this amazing drumming, and it just kind of brings you into this trance-like state, very meditative state. But through that, I was able to basically transport through space and time. I mean, for a lot of the sessions, we would literally go back to a lot of the things in my childhood. Some of these things I've mentioned to you, and like sort of re-experience them. And one fascinating thing that happened was one day after the session had ended, she goes, I just want to point this out, and I don't know if you realize this, but whenever we go back to your childhood, when you're describing to me what you're seeing and what you're experiencing, you're always referring to yourself as he. And I don't know if you realize that. So I just want to put that out there. And I hadn't realized it. But then when I kind of went home and thought about it, I realized I had always referred to myself and my body parts even as he. And I was like, whoa, okay. So anyways, that was like a really big, life-changing experience for me. It was right after I had gotten sober. It really helped me survive getting sober and sort of changing my entire life around. So I worked with her for a while. And then later I just sort of said, hey, I love this work so much. Like, can you show me how to do this with other people? So she's just sort of put me through this like boot camp training, of it. And, she'd send me 12 or 15 journeys. Okay, do journeys, all these. And I would just go and do them, just one right after another, and write them all out. And then I'd send it back to her and she'd be like, whoa, okay, you're doing this really fast. And you're like really getting, so I just loved it. And I really took to it. And it just became, it felt like so familiar to me, and just like it was a part of me. And so, sort of fast forward, at times I've done shamanic circles where I've just invited people bi-monthly. We have had people come and join. We've just drummed, and I've done either a guided journey or I've had everybody just do their own journey. And then we talk about it and share experiences, which is fascinating to do in a group, because people doing their own journeys will have overlapping information in a group. Like it's spectacular, really. And then I've done, again, one-on-one things where it might look like, having a client who says, I'm struggling with, it could be like money or something like that. And I've at times said, okay, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think like, what's the first instance that you recall that? And they might think, oh, when I was a little kid, this happened with my dad, or, whatever. And then I'll kind of dig deeper and say, oh, do you think that really was the first time? And sometimes it'll be that people can just instantly transport themselves back to, oh my God, I'm seeing this vision of this other life. I'm like a farmer, and then people always go, I don't know if this is real or not. I go, just go with it. Just say it, just say what's coming. And people will have this whole extravagant thing that they remember very detailed, and they're just telling me out loud, and I'm, getting questions from my guides that are kind of interacting with their guides. Sometimes I'll see something right before they say it. So it is just sort of walking through that. So sometimes it is past life things. Sometimes it's just energetic things where we're working sort of in some of the other sort of realms to clear and heal things. And yeah, I mean, it's probably been one of the most powerful tools, even just for my own self. It's still such a big part of my own practice, and how I usually, it's how I ended up at seminary. I mean, I was kind of just one day I was doing a journey in my backyard, and I was like asking my guides, okay, I had heard for years people saying that I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. All kinds of psychics, intuitives. One even said, I see on a Hay House stage, and I got published by Hay House. So you can't make that stuff up. And this was like 12 years ago. Anyways, I'm doing a journey, and I say, take me to this, a shaman I had worked with that does this, like a library you go to where you go and you can then open a book and have it transport you, kind of thing. So I went to the library in the sky, I think you call it. And I had some of my guides with me, and I asked them, show me my book. And I'm walking through this room, and all the books were outward, like the spine was showing, like normal you'd see in a bookstore or library. And then there was one that was turned the other way. And I was like, oh, I reach for it, I grab it, I open it. And it was like being transported through, like Harry Potter or magic, Lord of the Rings, like through the portal. And I ended up in this big room. It was like kind of like a conference or a convention. There's all these people in a room, and I'm like making my way through, and I see up way in the front, there's a stage, and there's like the big screen, and I'm getting closer and closer. And the screen literally says like Reverend Alex Reegan. And I was like, Reverend? Like, that's weird. Like, what are you talking about? And I kind of was just like, this is really weird. And I kind of finished the journey, and that's really kind of, it started just kind of fizzle out. And I came back out of the meditation, and I was like, what? So I talked to, my mentor. I said, hey, I had this journey. And she goes, yeah, I could see that. And I was like, what? How would I, and sure enough, she knew of a seminary that was like open and affirming, and it was interfaith. And literally within months, I applied there and got into the school, and it was like I saw the future. Is the only way I can really explain it. So yeah, it's been a spectacular part of my practice and just my life.
That's incredible. And, through this show, I've met so many people who do all of these kind of practices all around the world. And a lot of them have kindly said, look, I want to do a session with you. And I did a past life regression and future progression session with someone from the UK. Hello, Ray, if you're listening. And we went through this session. God, I think it must have gone for 2 hours. And we went back through my past lives, and I had about 3 or 4 different past lives. And before, I had done this, I've done like 2 years of sound healing where, you bring out, all past trauma kind of stuff through past lives and all that kind of thing. And anyway, we do these past lives. My first life, I was seaweed. I was seaweed.
Amazing.
Floating in the ocean. And I tell people this, my hairdresser and I still have jokes about it today. But she said, I just want to be seaweed. And then my second one, I was a crow. I was like a bird. Yeah. And the third, I was a Greek slave who was murdered. And I went through the entire death process. It was, I don't want to go through that again. And then went into the future where, yeah, it was spectacular. And I'm starting to see some glimmers of that stuff coming through in my life already. And I'm like, awesome. I see you.
Yep.
And people listening to us are probably on, these guys are kooky, but this stuff is real. It is real. Yeah. If you just go with your gut and listen to your intuition and go for that ride and just release all your judgment, release everything else,
yep,
you'll be amazed what can come through.
Yep, for sure.
And look at what it's done for you. Like, you are now living that life. It's incredible.
Yeah. It is incredible. Yeah. And I love this stuff. I mean, I love these kinds of conversations. I love to meet other people who are curious about this stuff and want to experience this, because, man, I would take a conversation like this any day over, shooting the shit about how the weather is or what they're doing at their office job, which I do too. I still do consulting and other work as well. And we all have our lives and things out. It can't always be that deep, no. But man, I'll take it as much as it can be. I would always take that stuff over feeling like, it's just surface level.
Now, where are you located in the States?
I'm in New Jersey.
New Jersey, right. I was
Yes.
trying to pick an accent, and I'm generally pretty good at them, but I was picking up a bit of almost a southern accent.
Yeah, I've lived all over this entire country. So now I have this mishmash. It's pretty fun, actually, because I've gotten in cabs or I've gotten in Ubers, and people are like, where are you from? You know, and I just like I've visited places and picked up some portion of their accent. You know, I lived in Texas for a while. I will always say y'all. I think that's the best way to like talk to a group of people is to say y'all. It covers all genders. It's like the most brilliant. So too bad, Texas. I definitely am stealing that. But yeah, it's a very hodgepodge, eclectic accent, and it's changing as my voice is changing on testosterone. That's also I'm changing it as well for sure.
Right. Now, tell us about the book. I mean, if people want to get a hold of it, as I'm looking at it going, God damn, I wish I could read that right now. Can you tell us where we can grab a copy?
You can get it everywhere books are sold. I actually even have Australian links for you that I will send you the link at some of the bookstores there, because I was actually published through the Hay House UK. So I have some special links that are UK and Australian links specifically. But everywhere you can buy books on the, you know, Amazons, Barnes and Nobles. If you Google, you can find some smaller bookstores that have it as well. It's also in like any ebooks, and also the audiobook you can find, which is my fun voice. So if you want to listen to me read to you for 6.5 hours, I highly recommend that. And yeah, so you can get it anywhere, and you can go to my website, and I have multiple links still on there as well. Or I think I have at least one now. I guess I've taken the big page down that had the initial push for everyone. But yeah, you can find it. You can Google Alex Reegan, and it's going to start coming up all over the place, which is great fun now.
But the book is called What Needs to Be Said. So jump on Amazon, wherever you buy books, and grab it. But Alex, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more, what is your website or your socials if they want to get in touch with you?
You bet. So my website is just alexreegan.com. And you can find me there. You can message me on there. There's a contact us or contact me form. And then on social media, I mostly participate. Instagram, sort of my big, it's just Rev Reegs. So REVREEGS. You can find me on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, which I still sometimes feel way too old to be on, but I try to do it. I try to do it. And Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well. And it's also at Rev Reegs. So all of them are at Rev Reegs. So you can find me on there, hit me up, shoot me a message. Like I said, if you're LGBTQI plus, hit me up. I'll do some free sessions with you. I like to support our community any way that I can. And if you're not, hit me up, because I might give you a free session too. I love to just help people out if that's needed. And if not, you can pay. Great. I try not to get too caught up in all of that stuff, because I think, again, I want to help people, and I want us to, come back together and see our collective oneness, and that we're better when we're working together on all of this stuff.
I'm going to do you one better, Alex, and I'm going to join the cause with you. And anyone who's LGBTQ plus that are listening and hear us and want a free session, I'll also join you, and I'll throw in some free sessions as well. So hit both of us up if you want to actually try spiritual coaching
There you go.
And connect with yourself.
Awesome.
Now,
I love it.
Alex, I've got the last big question for you.
Give it to me.
What's the change you'd like to see in the world, and how can we bring it to life?
I did a book club. So these women had bought my book, and they had a little book club, and I knew the brother of one of the women. So originally they'd said, "Oh, can you do like a Zoom in with them?" I was like, "Sure." Well, it turned out, he's like, "I'll host at my house. Will you come?" I was like, "You bet." So it was like, 5 or 6 women. Now these are all straight, cis, married. I think they were all women. Like, again, you'd think, oh, what do I have in common with a trans guy? Why am I reading his book? But that's sort of what I've challenged people to say. If you think you won't find yourself in my book, like, I dare you to read it. And the most fascinating thing was every single one of them said, "I saw myself in your story." Wow. Every single one of them. In fact, one of them said the most beautiful thing. She said, almost 2/3 of the way through, I just saw you as this energetic thing that I like, just energy, this being that I was connected to, that I felt total connection with. And it wasn't until I began to start talking about my transition and the surgery that I had and things like that, that she all of a sudden had this cognition of like, oh my God, this is a person with a body. Like, it was literally like the most amazing compliment, because she really just said, I just, for most of the story, just felt this connection through like this love essence space, you know, of what I believe is oneness. And so I think that's my hope. That's for the change in this world, is that we sort of get back to remembering who we are. And that we know that this is who we are. We are oneness. There's no place where you begin and I end. And the more we can tie back into that and do this work to excavate all the crap that's gotten in the way of that, that's who we really are. And that's where our like success lies. That's where our, you know, growth lies, is returning back home to that trueness of ourselves and of each other. That you're not the other. We're underneath it all. We're all running through the same energy, the same connection of love and oneness and unity.
Absolutely. You know, and it comes back to like when we're born, you know, the first day we're born without all that programming, all that judgment, all these labels, all this stuff. Like, if we could just take ourselves back to zero, like that'd be a huge change in the world, you know, if we could let go of all of that stuff.
For sure.
And that's what we're here for.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. For
Alex, I could sit and talk to you all day. Seriously, I have lost track of time and space and everything, and have felt completely connected to you, regardless of the fact that you're all the way in the States. Thank you for every single minute of your energy and love right here on The Ethical Evolution.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It means a lot. And I'm so excited that we are all finding each other in these little pods. Nikki, you know, we're all doing this work in the world. And I hope you'll come on my podcast, because I just recently started. I mean, I'm just a few episodes in, so I would love to have you on as well.
Done deal. Sign me up.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com.
Welcome to the Reverie channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie channel, where every view, every donation matters.
Welcome to Ringside with Ray and Prince. My name is Ray Leonard Jr.
Oh, is that the set? No, that's just my dad.
My name is Prince Daniels Jr.
Daniels again with a big hole. Touchdown.
On this show, we come to humanize
Athletes, entertainers, business executives. We're going to see what makes them tick.
Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there. Peace and power.
Electric acid. Electric acid.